Close your eyes. Just for a minute. I want you to picture a scuba diver coming up from a deep dive. Just hold that in your mind for a second. I want you to imagine the ascent from the depths, from the darkness to the light of the surface. Now, you can open your eyes for a moment. I really try to use this stool, but I don't know why I try every week and fail. If you know anything about diving, you might know that you can't just shoot straight to the surface, right? Does anybody know that? I was blessed to have an uncle that loved diving and loved scuba. He was all about it. He has a freshwater tank in his house, and he would go find fish and pay money and bring them home and put them in his tank. So all I heard about as a kid was soccer and scuba from this uncle. I don't scuba. I don't want to know what this looks like in a scuba suit. I don't want to try to get it on. But I do know that if you go down deep enough, then if you stay long enough, it begins to affect your body. And your body soaks up the pressure of the depths. And if you rush, well, that's just short. I appreciate it. But this is not going to work. Oh, that's really... This is chaotic. Okay. That's going to be an accident in 5 minutes. So. But I know that if you rush back up too fast, all of that pressure comes out of you wrong. And it can hurt you. Actually, it can kill you. So a good diver comes up slow. And they stop along the way. They make sure they have enough oxygen in their tank to ascend slowly. They let their body carry the deep back up into the shallow world at a pace that keeps them whole. You see, I've been thinking about this all week long because that's exactly where we are this morning. For 4 weeks, we've been diving, going deep. We've gone down into stillness, down into the quiet, and down into being fully known by God. And some of you have gone deep. Some of you have gone deeper than you have in this relationship with God than you've gone in years. You felt the pressure of His presence in a way you'd almost forgotten possible. Him drawing close to you. And now July is coming to an end. And August is very quickly approaching. When all the soccer for our family starts back, the inbox starts to refill because Monday's coming. And the school year is getting ready to mess up our lives again. It's on the horizon like a wave rushing towards us. And the question for this final week is not how do we rest? We've already learned that. We've talked about it for 3 weeks. The question is, how do we come up from the deep without losing everything we found down there? How do you take Sabbath with you into a world that never stops? Take a breath. We're going to go into one more week of slowing down. And we're still not in a hurry. If you're a guest today, I'm going to be really honest. These have been the longest sermons that I've preached all year long. It won't be that bad, I promise. But I want you to understand that there is a God that loves you, and whatever the world says they have for you, what He has is better. So I'm going to hopefully help express that today. But first, I want to stand back so everybody can have a picture of this whole, let's call it a dive for the last few weeks. Week 1, we talked about Martha's kitchen. We slowed the outer life, what it means to slow everything around us. We learned the body has to stop before the soul can rest. And we took a seat at Jesus' feet like Mary. Week 2, the man in the bed at 2 a.m. We slowed the inner life. We learned you can quiet the house and still not be quiet in your mind. And we handed our worries to our Father, who's always awake and ready to take them on. Week 3, the kid under the bed. We opened ourselves up. We learned that the God who sees everything is the God who knit us together on purpose. And we stopped hiding and started praying, search me and know me, oh God. Stop right now and feel how far we've gone from the beginning of this month to now. 4 weeks ago, some of us couldn't sit still for 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Last Sunday, we sat in silence together and let God search our hearts. And nobody bolted for the door. Praise the Lord. See, that's called formation. God's been doing something in this room and in our lives. But here's the honest danger, and I'd be a bad shepherd not to name it. Everything we've built this month is fragile if it only lives on Sundays in July. A Sabbath that stays on the calendar 1 month a year isn't a rhythm, it's a vacation. And you already know what happens after a vacation, because I sure do. You come back tan or burned, rested, and within 7 days, you can't tell you ever left. Some of us come back from the vacation hoping we had another vacation from the vacation. So this last week is about permanence. It's about how the deep comes with you. And Jesus has a word for it, and it's one of the most important words he ever spoke. So this morning we're going to look at John 15. This is the last night of Jesus' life. We're going to be in verses 1 through 8. But I need you to think about that. He's got hours left. Only a small window of time. He's already told them that he's leaving. The room is heavy. His disciples are now burdened by this. And out of everything he could say in the final breaths of freedom, here's what he chooses. I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Remain in me as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. So picture it. Jesus walking his friends through the dark toward a place he'll be arrested in a few hours. Passes a grapevine. I remember as a kid, when we lived in North Carolina, we had grapevines on this arbor in our backyard. And I would always get in trouble because I'd try to pick them early. I also got in trouble because some person gave me a hatchet as like a 6-year-old. And I was like, I'm going to chop it all down and climb this thing. Bad idea, kids. Don't do it. But he passes a grapevine. Maybe takes a branch in his hand and says this. This is the whole thing. I am the vine, you are the branches. Everything I've been trying to teach you comes down to one word. And the word is remain. Some of your Bibles say abide. I love the word abide. It's the same word. He says it over and over, 10 times in just a few verses. When Jesus says a word 10 times on the last night of his life, lean in and listen. He's handing you the key to everything. Remain, abide. In the original language, it's a word that means to stay, to dwell, to make your home somewhere and not leave. It's not the word for a visit. It's the word for residence. And that distinction is the whole sermon today. So I want to make it really easy to understand. There's a difference between visiting God and living with God. A lot of us are visitors. We visit God on Sunday morning. We visit him in crisis. We visit him when we don't have enough to pay our utility bill. We visit him when we have to make the phone call that something bad has happened. Or we visit him whenever we get a bad report from the doctor. But we don't abide. We drop by for the quiet time and then check out for a day. The way you'd stop by a friend's house, have a nice chat, and then go back to your actual life. And there's nothing wrong with a visit, but Jesus isn't asking to be visited. He's asking to be lived in. Abiding is not an event you attend. It's an address you live at. And the answer to our whole question this morning, how do you take Sabbath with you into a busy week? Well, you don't take it like a souvenir in your pocket. You take it with you the way a branch takes the vine with it, by never actually disconnecting in the first place. The rest doesn't come from the day off. The rest comes from the connection that the day off was teaching you to keep. You see, point one is this. Fruit is not something you produce. It's something you bear. Look at what Jesus says about the branches 4, verse 5. If you remain in me, you will bear much fruit. Now, here's a question I want you to actually think about. Have you ever seen a branch straining to make fruit? Have you? Like it's like shaking on the tree, like straining. Don't worry, I've been to the gym. I've seen that guy try to lift too much weight. Face turns red. The teeth are grinding. But he's sure he can do it. And I'm standing there going, nope, not going to happen. But he's determined. But despite his determination, if he's ill-equipped and if he hasn't trained for that moment, if he hasn't been prepared for that moment, he cannot accomplish what he wants to accomplish in his own strength. I don't see trees grunting. I don't see trees gritting their teeth, working up a sweat trying to squeeze out a grape. That would be ridiculous. A branch doesn't manufacture fruit. A branch bears fruit. There's a difference. There's a world of difference in those two words. Manufacturing is what a factory does. It's effort, it's pressure, it's force and output. Bearing is what a branch does. It just happens. It just stays connected to the vine. And the life of the vine flows up through it, and fruit happens. The fruit is natural, effortless overflow of a life that's plugged into the vine or the branch. Church, this reframes our entire Christian life because a lot of us have been living the Christian life like a factory, producing and straining, doing the job, serving on fumes, running on empty every day, trying to squeeze love and patience and joy out of ourselves by sheer willpower. and wondering why we're so tired and why the fruit is so thin. And can I tell you where this hits me? I told you at the start of this series that I went on a 2-week vacation and couldn't rest. Here's the diagnosis I've come to since we started. I couldn't rest because I had started living like a factory instead of a branch. Like the fruit depended on my output instead of my connection. A factory can't take a day off without production stopping. But a branch bears fruit while it sleeps and rests. Jesus says you were never supposed to manufacture it. You were supposed to bear it. Stay connected, and the fruit takes care of itself. Think about the fruit of the Spirit. Galatians 5:22, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. Man, I need to practice all of those more than I do. Now, have you ever tried to be patient by trying to be patient? Think about it. At 5 p.m., in the pickup line, with a kid melting down in the back seat, you cannot squeeze patience out of an empty branch in that situation. But a branch full of life, the life of Jesus, starts to bear patience it didn't have to work up. Because it's not coming from you. It's coming through you from Him. And notice it's not called the fruit of the it's called the fruit of the Spirit, not the achievements of discipline. The Spirit grows it, not you. You can't do it on your own. Your job is not to produce the crop. Your job is to stay on the vine that does. Point number 2 is this. Apart from Him, you can do nothing. And He means nothing. Now, Jesus says something in verse 5 that we tend to soften. And I don't know if you know me very well, but I don't like to soften things like that. Because He didn't, why should I? I want you to look at the last line. Apart from me, you can do nothing. Not a little, not some things poorly, nothing. We hear that and our pride wants to argue. My pride says, come on, nothing? I can't do anything? Like maybe I can do like a few things over here on my own. Maybe just a little bit. We want to argue this. I got a lot done this week apart from Jesus. I raised kids and paid bills and answered 200 emails apart from Jesus. But watch the branch again. Cut a branch off the vine, what can it do? Wither and die. For a little while, honestly, when you first cut it off, it looks fine, right? The leaves stay green. It's got just enough moisture to put on the facade for just a little while. You could set it on the table, and for a day or two, you might not even know it's cut off from the branch. It looks alive, but inside, it's dying. It just doesn't know it yet. Because the moment it was severed, the clock started. The green is borrowed. The life it's running on is life stored up from before the cut. And that runs out. A cut branch is not a living thing that's independent. It's a dying thing that hasn't caught up to the news that it's dying. So I wonder how many of us have been running on a stored life. On the reserves from an encounter with God we had 20 years ago. Maybe at camp, maybe at a revival. It happened that one time, and you've been holding on to it, but you have not remained connected. And you wonder why things aren't going the way you thought God was going to take them in your life. Well, maybe you fell off the tree a long time ago, and you're just holding on to the residual of what was. On the borrowed green. Looking fine on the table. Posting the verses. Showing up to serve and quietly dry because somewhere back there we drifted from a connection into a memory. And here's why this whole series has mattered. Slowing down is how a branch checks whether it's still attached. Hurry is the great disconnector. You see, when we're moving fast enough, we can go weeks severed from the vine and never notice because we're still coasting on borrowed green. It's only when we stop that we find out whether there's still life flowing in us or whether we've just been cut. We've been a cut branch in a nice vase looking alive. The good news of this verse is not the warning, it's the promise hiding inside of it. Apart from me, you can do nothing. Yes, that's true. But that means with me, connected to me. The very life of God flows up into you and out through you, and you become capable of fruit you could never have manufactured on your own. You were not built to generate life. You were built to carry it. The third point is this, and this one's painful. The pruning is not punishment. It's the gardener making room for more. Now I have to deal with this hard part of this passage because Jesus doesn't skip it and neither should we. I want you to look back at verse 2. There's a knife in this story. I'm a Southern male, so I often carry a knife in my pocket. I actually take everything out of my pockets on Sunday morning, so mine's sitting over there. Don't touch it. It's sharp. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. Every gardener knows this, and it feels backwards to the rest of us. If you want a plant to flourish, you have to cut it. Not because you're angry at it, because you love what it could become. You see, I have these two shrubs that I was blessed with when I bought the house. They are ugly. They are misshapen. I am a person of symmetry and flow. I design things. I make graphics. I build websites. I like things to be symmetrical. So when we bought our house and there was this withered bush in the front yard that should look like a box, but it looks like an arm sticking up out of the ground, I was like, what? I should cut it down and start over. But I didn't, because I knew that when you prune something, it grows back better than it was. So I have one beautiful, fully grown, mature bush on one side of my house, and then I still have this odd-shapen, I don't even know what to call it. It looks like a light bulb now. But I had to cut it all the way to the base almost for it to grow properly. Sometimes that happens to us. Sometimes it hurts. You see, an unpruned vine will run wild. Put all of its energy into leaves and length and looking impressive, and produce almost no fruit. So the gardener comes with the shears, and he cuts back the growth that looks productive but isn't. So the life of the plant gets concentrated into what actually bears fruit. And here's what I need you to hear, especially after a month of slowing down. Some of what got cut in you this month was pruning, and it was love from the gardener. When you deleted the app and felt that little panic the next day when you went to go find it, that was a snip. When you guarded the day and told somebody no, that was a snip because you were resting. When you got quiet and you took time to spend time with God, and when he put his finger on something in your life that didn't need to be there, or something you needed to let go of, that was another snip. It didn't always feel good, but pruning never does. But the gardener wasn't punishing you. He was making room for what he wants to do in you. He was cutting back the wild growth, all the busy, leafy, impressive nothing, so that the life in you could go where it actually counts. Sometimes, all the things that you've tied yourself to, like Martha, distract you from what he's actually calling you to. But notice who holds the knife. Verse 1, my Father is the gardener. It's not a stranger cutting on you. It's not a random person. It's not the enemy. It's the Father. The same one from last week who knit you together for purpose, who sees you completely and loves you anyway. In the midst of your junk, in the midst of everything in your life, he loves you. That's whose hand is on the shears. You can trust a cut from that hand, from our Father. You see, Hebrews 12:11 says, no discipline seems pleasant at the time. If you were ever a child, you understand this. Hopefully we all do. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. That explains why I got so many spankings as a kid. Okay. You see, later on, the vine doesn't understand the shears in the moment. It just feels the loss. But the months later, heavy with fruit it could never have carried as a wild tangle of leaves, then it understands. It understands the actions of the Father, the will of the Father. You see, I've reflected a lot on my life as we have walked through this series. And I will tell you, after being in ministry for a very long time, just in the Portland and Franklin area, almost 17 years, there are lots of moments where I can look back now and see where I created a tangled mess of growth on my own. Or things weren't going. They looked good. It looked like I was producing because I was doing stuff, but I was bearing no fruit. Even in ministry, even in the church. I was at the church all the time. You work at the church for 17 years. My goodness, you might as well live there. But that doesn't mean I was always bearing fruit. It means I was busy. It means I was trying to make fruit and manufacture it myself. But over the last few years, all the things that I thought that I had built, God's been like, snip. I'm like, I really liked that. I guess that's not supposed to be there anymore. Okay. All the things that I thought I was good at, snip. Oh man, I got to recalibrate and reconsider how I do this thing in my life. Maybe I wasn't doing it right. There have been so many things, even how I lead people, how I communicate with people, how all the things that I do now on a daily basis, at one point in my life, they have had to receive a snip because maybe I was doing it wrong. But I'll tell you now, I love watching the fruit grow where showy vines used to be. So I would much rather deal with the pain of the snip in a moment than to be a wild vine with no purpose, just taking up space in the kingdom. So, let me bring the whole series home, because there's a reason Jesus talks about fruit and not just rest. You might be thinking abiding sounds a little passive. Is the whole point of 4 weeks just to feel more peaceful? Does anybody feel more peaceful? Okay. No. Here's the turn. The peace you found this month was never meant to just sit inside of you. It was meant to flow through you. That's what fruit is for. It's not for the one bearing it. Fruit is never for the branch. A vine doesn't eat its own grapes. That would be gross. Fruit exists to feed somebody else. There's a line from an old Russian monk. If you don't study old Russian monks, spend 5 minutes Googling, and it's amazing. People that isolated themselves to serve and to draw closer to the Lord. Anyway, his name was Seraphim. Seraphim of Sarov. I had to watch the Google pronunciation video like 5 times. And I can't get what he said out of my head. Are you ready? He said, acquire a spirit of peace, and 1,000 souls around you will be saved. I wrote that down in my notebook, and I've read it every morning, and I'm just like, embrace peace, live out peace, walk in peace, speak peace, and 1,000 souls around me would be saved. Yesterday, we encountered a bunch. And my prayer is, Lord, let 1,000 souls around me be saved. Let me exude peace in the midst of a long line stretched down and around Bojangles twice. Let me exude peace. In the midst of heat, confusion, frustration, let me exude peace. And did I all day yesterday? Absolutely not. Nope. There were moments where I was the diametrically opposed opposite. Like I was completely opposite of peace. I was unhinged. Started early. And then I walked around in here because somebody had the wisdom of turning on worship music in here yesterday before the whole thing started. And I just came in here for a few minutes and gave it all to Jesus. And you know what he did? Snip. Snip. And then yesterday I just stood at the door halfway through the day as cars filled the road. And I watched people in Serve shirts and Living Free shirts. Even people like Dalton, who did not have a Serve shirt on. But he was serving. We watched a lady pulled in, got prayed for, got food, parked, and started serving until the end of the day. Because if you exude peace, 1,000 people around you will be saved. It's not just about giving food. Very little of it is about giving food. It's about giving hope. It's about giving peace. It's about reflecting Jesus. My entire childhood, I heard this thing like, I want to look like Jesus. I want to just look like Jesus. Close my eyes, open my eyes, I don't look like Jesus. I was sitting in a class years ago for one of my TSOM classes, and we were talking about that phrase. And I was sitting there processing it. And we were in the midst of a discussion, and I just stopped paying attention because I have wicked ADHD. Like, I'm not even on my notes right now. Like, I was sitting in this class chasing squirrels in my head, thinking about, man, this guy is long-winded. And I was thinking about that phrase of looking like Jesus. And all I could think about is, I don't want to just look like Jesus. I want to be a giant mirror. I don't even want them to see me. I want them to see the reflection of Jesus when they look at me. I'm imperfect. I'm flawed. I have issues. I'm human. But when they look at me, I just want to be a mirror. So all they see is his glory. And ever since that moment, that's all I've wanted to be. I want to bear fruit. I want to look like a mirror. Do I fail some days? Absolutely. Ask my kids. Ask my wife. And don't always do a good job. Nobody does. And if you have met the person that says they are perfect every day, they are liars and they are imperfect. Let me ask you a question. What do you look like every day? He said, acquire a spirit of peace, and 1,000 souls around you would be saved. What do you look like every day? Peace? Anxiety? He's not talking about a technique. He's talking about a person so full of God, so deeply at rest in the vine, that peace just comes off of them. And the people get drawn in without a word. Think about it. You already know people like this. When you're anxious, who do you want to be around? Me? It's my wife. Because even through sarcasm, she will help me find peace. And she will point me back to Jesus. You often don't want to be around another anxious person. How's that going to work? One anxious person and another anxious person? That sounds like chaos. You want to be near a calm person, the steady person, the one whose presence lowers your heart rate. That person is bearing fruit. Their peace is feeding you, and they might not even know it. Now think about our town. Think about Franklin. If you're from Portland, think about Portland. If you're from White House, think about White House. Think about somewhere you live. Your city is tired. Your coworkers are tired. Your classmates are tired. The parents in your kids' carpool are tired. I know. I hear them when I pull up to get my kids. And they're frustrated because the line's taking too long. And into that, God wants to plant a few hundred people who are genuinely, deeply, unhurried, carrying a peace the world can't manufacture, yet desperately wants. That is the mission hiding inside this whole series. We didn't spend a month resting just so we'd feel better. We spent a month learning to abide so this church, for even the people that watch online, would become a grove of deeply rooted people, standing calm in an anxious town, full of peace that just comes off of us, so that people might ask, where did you get that? That thing that's inside of you that makes you different in the midst of chaos. And we get to say, in the moment of what's different about you, it's not a what, it's who. It's who that makes me different, because it's who I know. So how do we actually keep all this? Well, Monday's coming, July is ending. How do we actually keep abiding when life speeds back up? Don't worry, I'm coming to the end. Let me give you an honest answer and then something practical. You keep the connection, not the conditions. You will not get a quiet beach every week. Man, that'd be nice. Let's move to Florida. Anyway, just kidding. I'm not called to Florida. I'm called to Franklin. If your abiding depends on perfect conditions, you'll lose it by August. But a branch abides in a storm the same way it abides in a calm day, by staying attached. You see, Brother Lawrence, another monk who worked in a monastery kitchen, called it practicing the presence of God. He said he felt as close to God washing dishes in the clatter and the clash of the dishes as he did in the quiet of the chapel. Because he was still attached to the same vine. It's all about the vine. Different weather, different noise. So here's the practical part. Don't try to keep all of it. We've covered a lot this month. But try to keep one thing. Just one thing. Pick one rhythm from this month that kept you connected and refuse to give it up. I'm going to be honest. Facebook's not going back on my phone. Because I realized by looking at the screen time thing, how much time I was unknowingly wasting on Facebook. But pick that one thing. Keep it in community, because a branch is never alone on the vine. That would be a weird looking tree. And to be honest, that's why we're not completely stopping with this. This is the part I've been waiting all month to tell you. And I kind of gave you a preview at the beginning. We're not stopping this when July stops. Everything you've tasted in these 4 weeks, the slowing, the stillness, the abiding, was never meant to be a summer thing. It was meant to be a new way of life. So next Sunday, August 2nd, we're starting something to help you actually keep it. We're calling it, I told you earlier, rhythms. Here's the heart of it. Rhythms is learning the unforced pace of life with God. I'm a music guy, so I thought we'll talk about rhythms. It's a series on the practices Jesus himself kept, the very things that let him live at a pace with room in it. He rested. He got alone with his Father. He gave his life away and never once seemed rushed. This fall, we're learning to walk like that. We're going to talk about spiritual formation. We'll spend August learning the practices of slowing down. We've talked about it, but what are the things that Jesus did to live like he lived? September, we're going to learn to put down roots. In October, learning to overflow. Because like I said, this is not just for us. It's to be poured out, to pour our lives out. If Summer Slowdown taught you to breathe, Rhythms teaches you to keep breathing all the way through. Every day. This is the ascent. Back up. This is how the diver comes up without losing the deep. But hear this part because it's the most important part. We are not doing it alone. You see, next Sunday we're going to introduce community groups. It launches the same day. I've asked families in our church to host these community groups because a rhythm needs people to keep it with you. Don't walk alone. This is the answer to everything I just said about keeping one thing in community. This is your grove. A branch was never meant to be the only branch on the vine. And you were never meant to abide by yourself in your living room, hoping you don't drift. So here's my ask. Don't walk out of this series and quietly go back to borrowed green by yourself. Don't go back to normal. Get in a group. If we can't find a group, let's make another group. Find your pace and find your people. There's going to be sign-ups next week. We're going to have them on Planning Center. And I want every person in this room in a group this fall. Stop trying to do this alone. That's how what God started in July survives into December. We're going to talk about this more next week as we introduce everything. But real quick, let's go back up to the diver. Coming up from the deep. Here's the thing I didn't tell you at the start. The diver doesn't leave the deep behind. That's the whole point. The diver comes up carrying the deep in his own body. And the slow ascent is what lets him keep it without hurting him. He resurfaces, and the surfaces have changed. He's been somewhere most people never go. He brings it back to the top with him into the ordinary light of day. And that's you this morning. You've been in the deep this month, and now you're surfacing back into ordinary time, back into a loud world outside of those doors. But you don't have to leave the deep behind. Jesus isn't a place you visited in July. He's the vine you live on in August, September, October, November, December, and then next January. And in the middle of the worst Monday you'll face this fall. It's probably during football season. Remain in me, he said, and I will remain in you. That's not a command barked at you from a distance. That's an invitation whispered on the last night of his life with a branch in his hand from a Savior who is hours away from being cut down himself so that you could stay connected forever. And that's the part of the vine story we cannot walk past this morning. Because a few hours after Jesus said these words, they took the true vine outside the city and they cut him down. This morning, we're going to practice communion. But before we do that, I have to extend an invitation. Some of you might have walked into this room not even knowing the Jesus we're talking about. I need you to listen to where Jesus was one more time when he gave us the vine picture, because it matters more than you know. At the end of chapter 14, right before we read this, Jesus says, "Come now, let us leave." They get up from a table and they walk out into the night. And what they had just finished doing at that table, they had just eaten the Last Supper. He had just broken bread and said, "This is my body." He had just lifted a cup and said, "This is my blood." And then minutes later, walking through the dark toward the garden where he'd be arrested, he passes a grapevine and says, "I am the true vine." Do you see it? The cup was still on his lips when he said it. Matthew 26:29, Jesus even calls the cup by its name. He says, "I will not drink from this fruit of the vine from now on until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." The fruit of the vine, that's what's in the cup this morning. It's not a coincidence, and it's not a cute connection. The Lord's table is the vine sermon you can hold in your hand. And here's the thing that made me sit back in my chair the other night. Earlier in John's Gospel in chapter 6, Jesus is teaching about this meal. And listen to the word he uses. John 6:56 says, "Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood remains in me and I in them." Remains. It's the same word, the exact same word he says 10 times in John 15. Abide, remain, stay. So when Jesus wanted to give his people a way to remain in him, a physical, repeatable, tangible way to stay attached to the vine for the rest of their lives, he didn't give them a technique. He gave them a table. He gave them bread and a cup and said, "Do this and keep on doing it. And every time you do it, you are remembering that you are grafted into me and my life is flowing into you." Church, we've taken 4 weeks to learn how to abide. And Jesus has been holding out the simplest picture of it in the whole time. Come to the table. Take the vine into your body and remain. But before we take it, I need to say something about this table because it matters. Living free, this is an open table. You don't have to be a member here. You don't have to wear the t-shirt. You don't have to wear the bracelet. You don't have to belong to this church or any church. If you know Jesus, this table is yours. And you are welcome at it. But there's one thing we do ask. We ask that you only take this bread and this cup if you truly know Christ and understand what he did for you. Because this isn't a snack and it's not a ritual, although the bread is pretty good. It is a declaration. When you take it, you are saying, I am on the vine. His body was broken for me. His blood was poured out for me. I am his.